The dog wouldn't stop barking after losing its owner until a child did something unexpected. Jennifer Davis woke up once again to the sharp sound of barking coming from the backyard next door. It was 5 in the morning on a Tuesday, and the beige dog left at the neighbor's house hadn't given anyone a break for 3 weeks. Her eyes burned with exhaustion as she got out of bed, knowing she wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. On the other side of the fence, Bailey continued, barking non-stop. The light-coated Labrador seemed to be in complete despair, running back and forth across the yard, stopping only to bark even louder toward the street. His paws left marks in the dry dirt as he moved frantically, as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. The homeowner, Dorothy Thompson, a 72-year-old woman, was at a complete loss. She had agreed to take Bailey in temporarily when her neighbor, Walter Johnson, had to move suddenly to care for his sick mother in another town. What was supposed to be just a few weeks had turned into an unbearable situation. Ethan Davis, Jennifer's 9-year-old son, watched everything from his bedroom window. The curly-haired boy with curious eyes had tried several times to approach the fence to get a closer look at the dog, but his mother always stopped him. She was too tired and too stressed to deal with another complication in life. "Ethan, get away from that window and go have your breakfast," Jennifer called from the kitchen, preparing breakfast with sharp movements that betrayed her irritation. The boy obeyed reluctantly, but he couldn't shake the sadness he saw in the dog's eyes. There was something there that touched him deeply, a pain he recognized from when his own grandfather had left for the countryside and never returned. Dorothy appeared in the yard wearing a faded blue robe, carrying a bowl of dog food. Her gray hair was disheveled, and her hands trembled slightly as she approached Bailey. The dog stopped barking for a few seconds, sniffed the food, but then resumed his constant agitation. "Hi, Bailey, please, eat something," the elderly woman pleaded in a weary voice. "You can't keep going like this, sweetheart." But the dog only wagged his tail briefly before starting his desperate barking again. His brown eyes were glassy with sadness, and his panting breath showed just how exhausted he was from all the noise. Jennifer knocked on Dorothy's door at 7 in the morning. Her patience had run out, and she needed to work as an administrative assistant at a small accounting firm in the neighborhood. She couldn't keep being late because of lack of sleep. "Mrs. Dorothy, with all due respect, but this can't go on," Jennifer said, trying to stay calm. "The dog has been barking non-stop for 3 weeks. My son can't focus on school. I can't sleep." Dorothy opened the door with red, tired eyes. It was clear she hadn't been sleeping well either. Her hands gripped the doorknob tightly, as if she needed support to stay standing. "I know, dear, I know. I haven't been sleeping either. I've tried everything," as the woman replied, her voice strained. "I gave him special food, played music, even bought those toys they sell at the pet store. Nothing works. Where's the owner? It can't stay like this forever." Walter called yesterday. His mother got worse and had to be hospitalized. He doesn't know when he'll be back. He said if he can't take care of Bailey, he'll have to give him away. Jennifer felt a pang in her chest. Even though she was frustrated with the situation, the thought of separating the dog from his owner moved her. She had known Walter for years. He was a kind man who treated Bailey like his own child. "Maybe that's for the best," Jennifer said, but her words lacked conviction. Ethan listened from his front door wearing his school uniform. Something in his chest rebelled against the idea of separating Bailey from his owner. The boy knew how painful it was when someone you love goes away. At school, Ethan couldn't focus on his lessons. His teacher, Susan Parker, noticed he was distracted and asked if everything was all right. The boy just shook his head, but his thoughts were fixed on Bailey. During recess, he told his best friend, Ryan Miller, about the dog situation. Ryan, always practical, suggested Ethan talk to his parents about adopting Bailey, but Ethan knew that was impossible. His mother was already overwhelmed raising him alone. "My mom says his owner is far away taking care of his grandma who got sick," Ethan explained, absent-mindedly playing with his snack. "But Bailey doesn't understand that. He just knows his owner disappeared." "Dogs are like that," Ryan said, taking a bite of his sandwich. "My cousin had one that got sad when he went to live with his dad, but he got used to it. I don't know if Bailey will get used to it. He seems really sad." Dear listener, If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. When Ethan got home from school that afternoon, he found his mother talking with other neighbors on the sidewalk. Mrs. Wilson from number 47 was gesturing nervously as she spoke. Her husband, George, nodded in agreement. "This can't go on, Jennifer," Mrs. Wilson said, adjusting her glasses. "My grandson came to stay for the weekend and barely slept. The poor child was scared from all the noise." "And what do you want me to do?" Jennifer asked, clearly irritated. "The dog isn't mine." "Someone needs to do something," George interjected, a middle-aged man with a graying mustache. "If Mrs. Dorothy can't take care of him, she should take him to a shelter or give him away already." Ethan felt a lump in his throat hearing those words. The thought of Bailey being taken to an unknown place made him anxious. He went inside without speaking to anyone, straight to his room, and stared out the window. Bailey was lying under a tree in the backyard, panting from all the barking. Even from a distance, Ethan could see the dog was thin and sad. His drooping ears and defeated posture told a story of abandonment that tugged at the boy's heart. That night at dinner, Jennifer mentioned the conversation with the neighbors. Her voice carried the exhaustion of the past few weeks. "The neighbors are losing patience, Ethan. So am I. I can't keep going to work looking like I haven't slept." "Mom, but if they give Bailey away, what if his owner comes back?" Ethan asked, pushing the beans around his plate. "Sweetheart, sometimes life is like that. We can't always keep the ones we love," Jennifer replied. But her words carried a personal sadness Ethan couldn't quite place. "But it's not right, Mom. Bailey's waiting for his owner to come back." Jennifer stopped eating and looked at her son. There was a determination in the boy's eyes that she recognized, the same kind-hearted stubbornness she saw in the mirror when she was younger and still believed she could save the world. "Hey, Ethan, real life isn't a movie, okay? Not everything has a happy ending." But Ethan wasn't convinced. That night, as he listened to Bailey's constant barking, he made a silent promise to himself. Somehow he would help that dog find the peace he was searching for. The next morning, before school, Ethan made a decision that would change everything. He took a piece of bread from breakfast, and when his mother went to the bathroom, he slipped out the back door. The backyard of the Davis family bordered Dorothy Thompson's, separated only by a low wooden fence. Ethan had managed to squeeze through a gap between the boards he'd noticed days earlier. Bailey stopped barking the moment he saw the boy appear in the yard. His brown eyes locked onto Ethan with a mix of surprise and hope. The dog approached slowly, his tail wagging timidly. "Versi tu de young mother." "Hi, Bailey," Ethan whispered, holding out a piece of bread. "I'm Ethan, I live next door." The Labrador sniffed the boy's hand before gently accepting the bread. His eyes never left Ethan's face, as if trying to decide whether he could trust this new person. Ethan knelt beside the dog and began scratching behind his ears. Bailey rested his head against the boy's leg and, for the first time in weeks, fell completely still. "You miss your owner, don't you?" Ethan said softly. "I get it. Sometimes I miss people who've gone away too." It was then that Dorothy appeared at the back door. She'd noticed Bailey's sudden silence and stepped outside to see what was happening. When she spotted Ethan kneeling beside the dog, her eyes filled with tears. "Sweetheart, how did you do that?" the older woman asked, moving slowly so as not to startle Bailey. "I just talked to him," Ethan replied, still petting the dog. "I think he just needed someone to understand how he's feeling." Dorothy watched, in disbelief. Bailey was calm for the first time since he'd arrived, leaning against the boy as if he'd found a friend. His eyes, once desperate, now held a fleeting peace. "Don't you need to go to school?" Dorothy asked, eyeing Ethan's uniform. "I do, but..." Ethan hesitated, glancing at Bailey. "What if I come back after class? Do you think he'd stay calmer?" The woman nodded, moved. Anything that could bring peace to this situation was welcome. She'd called Walter the night before, and he'd grown increasingly worried about both the neighbors and Bailey himself. Ethan stood up slowly, promising Bailey he'd return soon. The dog followed him to the fence, watching him leave with eyes that seemed to understand he'd found someone special. When Jennifer found out her son had been in the neighbor's yard, She felt both worried and irritated. She was waiting at the door when he got back from school, arms crossed and a stern look on her face. "Ethan Davis, what were you thinking going over there without telling me?" Jennifer demanded, pointing a finger at him. "Mom, I just wanted to help. Bailey stopped barking when I talked to him," Ethan replied, slipping off his backpack and leaning it against the wall. "That's not your responsibility, Ethan. You're a child." "But I calmed him down, Mom. Mrs. Dorothy saw it." Jennifer sighed, deeply. She knew her son had a heart too big for his own good, always wanting to help those in pain. It was a beautiful quality, but it worried her too. "All right, but you only go over there if I'm with you. Understand?" Ethan eagerly agreed, and the two walked over to Dorothy's house together. The older woman greeted them with a tired but hopeful smile. "Mrs. Jennifer, I don't know what this boy did, but Bailey stayed calm all afternoon. He only started barking again when it got dark." Jennifer watched as Ethan approached Bailey once more. The dog immediately stopped barking and ran to the boy, wagging his tail and licking his hand. The change was visible and touching. "How do you do that?" Jennifer asked, amazed by the connection between her son and the dog. "I talked to him about his owner," Ethan explained, sitting on the ground to be at Bailey's level. "I tell him his owner hasn't forgotten him, that he's just taking care of his family. Then he calms down a bit." Dorothy approached and sat on a plastic chair in the backyard. Her movements showed the exhaustion of the past few weeks, but also obvious relief. "Walter called this morning," she said, absent-mindedly stroking the leaves of a plant beside her. "His mother improved a little, but he still can't come back. Said he feels really guilty for leaving Bailey like this." Jennifer felt a pang in her chest. She had known Walter since moving to the neighborhood 5 years ago. He was a kind man, retired from construction, who had lived alone with Bailey ever since his wife moved to a specialized nursing home. "Isn't there any family who can help?" Jennifer asked. "He only has one brother, but he lives too far away. And Walter doesn't want to leave his mother alone. She's 86 and very frail." Ethan kept talking softly to Bailey, who was lying beside him, with his head resting on the boy's leg. The scene was touching, showing a genuine connection between the two. "Mom, what if we help take care of Bailey until his owner comes back?" Ethan suggested, looking hopefully at Jennifer. "Ethan, I work all day. We can't take care of a dog. But I can come here after school just to keep him company. Mrs. Dorothy handles the food, and I'll make sure he feels less alone." Dorothy looked at Jennifer with hope. Ethan's idea made sense and could temporarily solve everyone's problem. "If you're okay with it, I don't mind," Jennifer said, surprising herself with her own answer. "As long as it's only after school and only until his owner returns." From that day on, a routine was established that brought peace to the whole neighborhood. Ethan would come home from school, finish his homework quickly, and head to Dorothy's backyard to spend time with Bailey. The dog barked much less, only occasionally at night. The neighbors noticed the difference right away. Mrs. Wilson and George came to thank Jennifer for her son's initiative. Other residents on the street also commented positively on the change. But the situation was far from completely resolved. Walter called every week, always with mixed news about his mother's health. Sometimes she improved, sometimes she worsened, and there was no telling when he could return. During these calls, Dorothy would tell him how Ethan was helping with Bailey. Walter would get emotional and thank them, but he also felt guilty for causing so much trouble. "Dorothy, I don't know what to do anymore," Walter said over the phone, his voice heavy with sadness. "Maybe it's better to just give Bailey away. It's not fair to you, or to him." "Don't say that, Walter. Ethan's taking such good care of him. Bailey's much calmer now. But for how long? The boy can't be responsible for my dog forever." These conversations left Dorothy unsettled. She had grown fond of Bailey and knew how emotionally invested Ethan was in the situation. She also knew Walter was suffering without his loyal companion. Then, about 6 weeks after Ethan started looking after Bailey, something happened that changed everything. The boy was in the backyard as usual, talking to the dog, when he noticed Bailey acting strange. The dog was restless again, but not barking. He paced in circles, sniffed the air constantly, and stared intently at the street as if waiting for someone. His behavior was similar to those first days, but with a different energy. "What's wrong, Bailey?" Ethan asked, trying to soothe him. "Do you sense something?" Dorothy also noticed the dog's restlessness and approached with concern. She had learned to interpret Bailey's moods and knew something was different. "Do you think he's sick?" she asked, watching the dog sniff insistently toward the entrance of the backyard. That's when they heard the sound of a car stopping in front of the house. Bailey immediately bolted toward the gate, barking, but this time his barks were different, higher pitched and excited. Ethan and Dorothy exchanged glances, confused about what was happening. The sound of the gate opening sent Bailey into a frenzy, running back and forth with his tail wagging wildly. "Bailey," called a familiar male voice. It was Walter. He had returned without warning, driving through the night to arrive the next morning. His mother had improved significantly, and he couldn't bear being away from Bailey any longer. The reunion was emotional. Bailey jumped on Walter, licked his face, ran in circles around him, whining with joy. Walter was visibly moved, kneeling on the ground, hugging his loyal companion. Ethan watched the scene with a big smile, but also a pang of sadness. He had grown fond of Bailey and knew he would miss the time they spent together every day. Dorothy cried with emotion, seeing the genuine happiness of both. Walter stood up and hugged her, thanking her tearfully for everything she had done. "Dorothy, how can I ever thank you?" Walter said, his eyes red with emotion. "You took care of my boy, as if he were your own." "I didn't do much, Walter. Ethan was the one who really helped," Dorothy replied, pointing to the boy who stood watching from a slight distance. Walter walked over to Ethan with Bailey by his side. The dog kept moving between the two, as if wanting to introduce his new friend to his owner. "Son, Dorothy told me everything you did for Bailey. I don't know how to thank you," Walter said, extending his hand to Ethan. "I just talked to him," Ethan replied shyly. "I told him you'd come back." "And how did you know I'd come back?" Ethan thought for a few seconds before answering, petting Bailey, who had moved closer to him. "Because people who truly love always come back, and anyone could see how much you love Bailey." The boy's simple words touched Walter deeply. He knelt to be at Ethan's level and hugged him, with Bailey between them. "You're right, son. People who truly love always come back." Jennifer had just returned from work, and seeing movement in the neighbor's backyard, came to check what was happening. When she saw Walter, she smiled in relief. Finally, the situation was resolved. "Walter, it's so good you're back," Jennifer greeted, walking toward the group. "Jennifer, I don't know how to thank you. Dorothy told me how Ethan helped Bailey. You all saved my boy." "Actually, I think Bailey saved Ethan," Jennifer replied, watching how naturally her son interacted with the dog. "He learned so much about caring for those we love." The afternoon passed quickly, as Walter shared stories about his time in the other city. His mother had gone through a rough patch, but was now stable and being cared for by a specialized nurse. He would still need to visit occasionally, but not for such long stretches. "And when you have to travel again?" Ethan asked, worried Bailey might be left alone once more. "Well, I've been thinking about that," Walter said, glancing at Jennifer. "If you're okay with it, maybe Ethan could keep visiting Bailey even when I'm here. I think they've become great friends." Ethan's face lit up at the suggestion. The idea of continuing his friendship with Bailey made him incredibly happy. Jennifer agreed, setting that the visits would be on weekends and after school, always with supervision. When night fell and everyone said their goodbyes, Ethan returned, home with a strange feeling. He was happy about Bailey and Walter's reunion, but also a little sad because his special mission had ended. During dinner, he was quieter than usual. Jennifer noticed and asked what was wrong. "Mum, do you think I did the right thing?" asked Ethan, pushing his food around without much appetite. "What do you mean, sweetheart? Should I have let Bailey get used to being without his owner? Maybe it would have been better for him to forget." Jennifer stopped eating and looked seriously at her son. It was a deep question for a 9-year-old, but it showed how much Ethan had matured through the experience. "Ethan, do you think it's better to forget who we love or to hold on to hope of reuniting?" "To have hope, right? Then you did the right thing. You helped Bailey keep hope, and his hope became reality." That night, Ethan slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. There were no barks coming from the backyard next door, just the quiet silence of an animal who had found his family again. But the story was far from over. In the days that followed, Ethan would discover that his connection with Bailey had changed something inside him, awakening a passion that would shape much of his future. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, the following Saturday, Ethan went to visit Bailey as planned. He found Walter in the backyard, organizing some belongings he'd brought back from his trip. The gray-haired man with a kind face smiled when he saw the boy. "Ethan, Bailey's been restless all morning. I think he knew you were coming." Sure enough, Bailey ran to Ethan as soon as he saw him, showing the same joy as always. But there was something different in the dog's behavior. He seemed more confident, more secure, as if he knew his world was whole again. "Mr. Walter, can I ask you something?" said Ethan while playing with Bailey. "Of course, son. What do you want to know?" "How did you know Bailey would be okay until you came back?" Walter stopped what he was doing and sat in a chair near Ethan. The boy's question made him reflect on the difficult days he'd spent away from home. "You know, Ethan, I didn't know. There were many nights I lay awake worried, wondering if I was doing the right thing. But I trusted in the love we have for each other. What if Bailey had forgotten you? Then I'd have to win his love back. But true love doesn't just disappear, Ethan. It might hide, it might hurt, but it doesn't vanish." Ethan took in those words as he watched Bailey run around the yard. The dog occasionally stopped to look at them, as if making sure they were still there. "Ethan, can I tell you something?" Walter said, lowering his voice. "When I was away, one of the things that gave me strength was knowing you were looking after Bailey. I knew he wasn't completely alone, but I only talked to him. Sometimes, all we need is someone who understands our pain, son. You understood Bailey's pain, and that made all the difference." In the weeks that followed, Ethan kept up his regular visits to Bailey and Walter. What had started as a rescue mission turned into a genuine friendship between the boy and the older man. Walter began teaching Ethan about animal care, how to bathe Bailey, brush his fur, and recognize when he was sick. Ethan soaked up every bit of information with fascination. "You've got a knack for this, Ethan," Walter remarked one day, watching how carefully the boy brushed Bailey. "Have you ever thought about becoming a vet when you grow up?" The question planted a seed in Ethan's mind. He had never really thought about specific careers before, but the idea of caring for animals deeply appealed to him. At home, Ethan started researching veterinary medicine on the school computer. He discovered he'd need to study hard, especially biology and science. The prospect didn't scare him. On the contrary, it motivated him. Jennifer noticed her son's growing enthusiasm and felt proud to see him find a passion so early. She herself hadn't been so lucky, working jobs that paid the bills but brought little personal satisfaction. "Ethan, are you sure you want to be a vet?" Jennifer asked one evening as he studied at the kitchen table. "I am, Mom. I want to help animals like I helped Bailey." "You know you'll have to study a lot, right? Veterinary school is tough." "I know, but when you love what you do, it's not so hard, is it?" His mature response impressed Jennifer. She decided to support Ethan's dream however she could, even though she knew it would be a financial challenge. Meanwhile, Walter's life was also changing. He had started getting visits from neighbors who had questions about their pets. His experience with Bailey and his natural patience made him an informal reference in the neighborhood. Mrs. Wilson brought her cat with an eye problem. George asked for help with his bird that had stopped singing. Dorothy consulted Walter about feeding the fish she kept in an aquarium. "Walter, you should open a pet store," Dorothy suggested one day, watching as he advised another neighbor on hamster care. Dorothy, I don't know anything about business. I just know how to care for animals." But that's exactly what people need. Someone who truly understands and cares. The idea stuck with Walter, but he didn't know how to make it a reality. His retirement was modest, and he had no capital to invest in a business. Ethan, who was present during this conversation, had an idea that surprised all the adults. "Mr. Walter, what if you started small? Just selling a few things from home for the neighbors who already come to you for help. How do you mean, Ethan? You could buy some food, a few toys, basic medicines, and sell them to people who need them. Then, when you have more money, you could think about a real store. The simplicity of Ethan's suggestion made sense to everyone. Walter could start small, serving just the local demand without big financial risks. You know, that's not a bad idea, Dorothy said thoughtfully. There's no pet store nearby in the neighborhood. People always have to go downtown. Jennifer, who had just gotten home from work and joined the conversation, also found the idea interesting. Walter, do you know any suppliers? Do you know where to buy these things? I know a few places downtown where I always bought Bailey's things. Some owners are old acquaintances. The conversation continued excitedly, with everyone contributing. Suggestions. Ethan was thrilled to see how his simple idea was taking shape and energizing the adults. That night, Walter couldn't sleep well. The possibility of turning his passion for animals into something more concrete left him both anxious and hopeful. Bailey seemed to sense his owner's restlessness, staying more attentive and affectionate than usual. The next morning, Walter made a decision. He picked up the phone and called Michael Brown, owner of a pet supply store downtown, where he had bought Bailey's things for years. Michael, it's Walter, the one who always buys food for Bailey. Hey Walter, how are you? It's been a while since you've stopped by. Well, I was traveling. Michael, I wanted to talk to you about something. Do you sell to resellers? The conversation was positive. Michael explained how wholesale sales worked, what the profit margins were, and which products sold the most. Walter wrote everything down carefully, doing mental calculations about the initial investment needed. When Ethan arrived for his regular afternoon visit, he found Walter excited, showing him a list of products and prices he had written down. Ethan, your idea might work. I talked to a supplier and the numbers make sense. Really, Mr. Walter, that's great. But I still have some doubts. Is there really a market here in the neighborhood? Ethan thought for a few seconds before answering. His childlike mind sometimes saw solutions that adults overcomplicated. Mr. Walter, how many people have come here asking for help with their pets? About 10, 15. And didn't they all need to buy something for their animals after you gave them advice? Yeah, that's true. Mrs. Wilson had to buy eye drops for her cat. George bought vitamins for his bird. Then there's a market, right? You just need to have the things they need close by. Ethan's simple logic convinced Walter it was worth a try. He decided to start with a small investment, buying only a few basic high-demand products. The following weekend, Walter made his first wholesale purchase. He came home with a few bags of dog and cat food, some basic toys, shampoos, and simple medications like dewormers. He organized everything in a corner of his garage, creating a small makeshift store. Bailey watched curiously, as if he knew something important was happening. Bailey, your dad's going to be a businessman, Walter joked, petting the dog. And it all started because you got sad when I traveled. Ethan was there when Walter arranged the first products. The boy suggested making a simple sign announcing pet products for sale and putting it in front of the house. Mr. Walter, you could write that you also give advice on pet care. That's what makes you different from other stores. Ethan's suggestion made Walter realize he truly had something special. This wasn't just another store. It was a place where people could find personalized guidance for their pets. Dorothy helped make the sign using materials she had at home. The result was simple but effective. Pet products and advice. Walter. Brown. When the sign went up in front of the house, a few curious neighbors approached. Mrs. Wilson was the first official customer, buying food for her cat and taking the opportunity to ask a few questions about pet nutrition. Walter, how wonderful to have this nearby, she said, paying for her purchase. It'll save us all so much time. George showed up the next day, interested in supplements for his bird. Other neighbors began stopping by to see what was available. Ethan watched everything with growing excitement. Seeing his simple idea come to life made him proud and more determined about his own future. Mom, did you see how happy Mr. Walter is? Ethan commented during dinner. I did, son. You had a very good idea. I want to do the same thing when I'm a vet. Not just care for animals, but help people understand their pets better. Jennifer smiled, seeing how the experience with Bailey had matured her son and shaped his life goals. She decided she would do everything in her power to support Ethan's dream. In the following weeks, Walter's small business grew organically. The word of mouth worked well in the neighborhood, and soon he had regular customers who came not only to buy products, but also to seek advice. One afternoon, an unfamiliar woman arrived with a puppy in her arms. She was visibly worried and had been referred by a neighbor. "Are you Walter, the one who knows about dogs?" she asked, holding the puppy carefully. "That's me. What's the problem?" "I found this abandoned puppy on the street. He's very weak and I don't know what to do. My neighbor said you could help me." Walter gently examined the puppy. It was a small mutt, clearly malnourished and scared. Its eyes hadn't even fully opened yet. "He's very young, probably about 3 weeks old. He needs special milk and constant care," Walter explained, softly stroking the animal. "I want to take care of him, but I don't know how." Walter sold her the special puppy milk and taught the woman how to prepare and give the bottle. He also explained the feeding schedule and basic care needed. Ethan was present during the entire conversation, absorbing every detail. When the woman left with the puppy and instructions, he asked a question that surprised Walter. "Mr. Walter, what if something more serious happens to this puppy? You're not a vet." The question touched on an important point. Walter really didn't have veterinary training and knew there were limits to what he could do. "You're right, Ethan. I can only advise on basic care. More serious cases really need a vet." "But there's no vet nearby in the neighborhood." "That's true. The closest one is downtown." Ethan grew thoughtful. A new idea was forming in his mind, but this time he decided to think it through before sharing it with the adults. That night at home, Ethan researched mobile veterinary services online. He discovered there were vets who made house calls, bringing basic equipment in their cars. The discovery excited him. Maybe there was a way to combine Walter's services with professional veterinary care, creating a more complete solution for the neighborhood. But Ethan knew he was just a kid and that his idea would need the approval and help of the adults. He decided to talk to his mother first before proposing anything to Walter. "Mom, do you think a vet would agree to come to the neighborhood if there were enough guaranteed clients?" Ethan asked during breakfast. "Maybe. Why?" "Well, Mr. Walter helps a lot of people, but sometimes pets really need a vet. It'd be great if one could come here." Jennifer was impressed by her son's reasoning. The idea really made sense and could benefit the whole community. "Ethan, have you talked to Walter about this yet?" "Not yet. I wanted to know what you thought first." "I think it's an interesting idea, but you'd have to research whether there are vets who offer that kind of service." "I already did. They exist. It's called house calls." Jennifer smiled, admiring her son's initiative. She suggested Ethan talk to Walter about the possibility, but always making it clear they were just the ideas of a curious kid. The following Saturday, Ethan shared his research with Walter. The man was interested in the proposal, but also concerned about the complexity of making it happen. "It's a good idea, Ethan, but I don't know any vets who do that kind of work. I can look up phone numbers online and you can call to ask." Ethan's determination was contagious. Walter agreed it was worth at least looking into the possibility. Ethan spent the afternoon researching veterinary clinics in the area and jotting down phone numbers of professionals who made house calls. His final list had 5 names with their respective contacts. "Here you go, Mr. Walter. Here are the phone numbers. You can call and explain the situation in the neighborhood." Walter took the list. Impressed by the boys' organization, he decided he would call the next day when he had more time to talk calmly. On Monday morning, Walter began making the calls. The first results weren't encouraging. 2 veterinarians said they didn't service areas so far from downtown, and a third charged rates that seemed too high for the neighborhood's budget. The 4th call, however, brought a different response. Dr. Scott Williams, a young veterinarian who had recently graduated, showed interest in the proposal. "Mr. Walter, I'm actually looking for ways to expand my practice," Dr. Scott said over the phone. "I do house calls, but I'm still building my clientele." "How would it work?" Walter asked. "I could come to the neighborhood on fixed days, Of the week, maybe Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. If you can organize the appointments, that would be great for me. The conversation flowed well. Dr. Scott explained his rates, which were reasonable, and seemed eager to visit the neighborhood and assess the actual demand. "Dr. Scott, how about you come by one day so we can talk in person?" Walter suggested. "Perfect. How about next Thursday afternoon?" When Ethan came home from school and heard the news, he was thrilled. His idea was coming together faster than he had imagined. "Mr. Walter, you're going to make it happen. You'll have products, advice, and a vet. It's going to be the best place to care for pets in the whole area." Ethan's enthusiasm was contagious, but Walter tried to stay grounded. There were still many details to work out, and he wasn't sure if it would succeed. Thursday came quickly. Dr. Scott arrived at the agreed time, driving a white car with stickers advertising his veterinary services. He was a young man around 30, with glasses and a friendly expression. "Mr. Walter?" the vet greeted, extending his hand. "That's me. Welcome, doctor." Ethan was there, of course, eager to meet the vet who could bring another one of his ideas to life. "And this is Ethan," Walter introduced. He was the one who came up with the idea of finding a vet to serve the neighborhood. Dr. Scott greeted Ethan seriously, treating him like an adult. "Nice to meet you, Ethan. Your idea is excellent. It makes a lot of sense to bring care closer to people." The conversation between Walter and Dr. Scott was productive. The vet examined the available space, met some curious neighbors who stopped by and listened to the most common problems in the area. "Mr. Walter, I think we can form an interesting partnership," Dr. Scott said after assessing the situation. "I'll bring the basic equipment and provide care right here in your home. You handle the scheduling and keep selling products and offering general advice. And how do we split the profits?" "Actually, I'd prefer to pay a fixed fee for using the space. That makes it simpler to manage." The agreement Dr. Scott proposed was fair and didn't complicate Walter's life. They settled on the vet, coming 2 afternoons a week initially, with adjustments based on demand. Ethan watched the whole negotiation fascinated. Seeing adults organizing a business related to animal care fueled his dream of becoming a vet even more. "Dr. Scott, can I ask you something?" Ethan said during a pause in the conversation. "Of course, Ethan. What's it like being a vet? Is it hard?" "It's a wonderful profession, but it takes a lot of study and dedication. Are you interested?" "Yes. I want to help animals like Bailey." Scott looked at Walter, who quickly explained the story of how Ethan had helped Bailey during his absence. "Ethan, you have the right profile to be a vet," said Dr. Scott, smiling. "If you'd like, when I'm working here, you can observe. Always with the owner's permission, of course." The invitation left Ethan over the moon. The possibility of watching real veterinary appointments was more than he had ever dreamed of. Dr. Scott's first day of appointments was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Walter put up notices in the neighboring houses to inform them about the new service and how to schedule appointments. The response was immediate. Several people called or came in person to book times. Mrs. Wilson wanted a general checkup for her cat George had questions about his bird's diet, and other folks from the neighborhood showed up with all kinds of animals. Ethan could barely sleep from excitement, waiting for Tuesday to arrive. When the day finally came, he rushed home from school, ate lunch quickly, and headed to Walter's house. Dr. Scott was already there, setting up his equipment on a makeshift table in the backyard. His bag contained a stethoscope, thermometer, basic medications, and other tools that Ethan watched with fascination. "Ready to be my assistant, Ethan?" Dr. Scott teased. "Can I really help?" "Of course. You can hold some of the animals, help calm them down, things like that." The first patient was Mrs. Wilson's cat. The animal was nervous, but Ethan managed to soothe it while Dr. Scott performed the exam. The vet explained each step, both to the owner and to Ethan. "The heart sounds normal. No murmurs," said Dr. Scott, letting Ethan listen through the stethoscope. "And the temperature is good too." Ethan was amazed to hear the cat's heartbeat. It was the first time he'd ever used a real stethoscope, and the experience was thrilling. The second appointment was more complicated. A woman had brought in a dog that was limping on one of its hind legs. Dr. Scott had to do a more detailed exam, carefully checking the animal's leg. Looks like a simple sprain, the vet explained. Nothing serious, but it needs a few days of rest and anti-inflammatories. Ethan watched closely as Dr. Scott examined the dog, asking specific questions about when the limping had started, whether it had fallen, or if it showed pain at any particular moment. "Ethan, did you notice how I asked about the history of the problem?" Dr. Scott said during a break between appointments. "Often, what the owners tell us is more important than the physical exam." "How so?" "For example, if the dog started limping, after playing in the yard, it could be one thing. If it started out of nowhere, it could be another. Animals can't talk, so we have to be detectives." The explanation made perfect sense to Ethan. He realized being a vet wasn't just about examining animals, it was also about asking the right questions to their owners. The third and final appointment of the day was the most memorable for Ethan. A young woman brought in a kitten she had found abandoned on the street. The little one was very weak and dehydrated. "This kitten needs intensive care," Dr. Scott said, after examining it. "It's malnourished and starting to get dehydrated. Will it be okay?" the woman asked, clearly worried. "It will, but it needs dedication. I'll give you a feeding and medication plan. Do you have time to follow it carefully?" "I do. I can't let it suffer." Dr. Scott prepared detailed instructions, including the type of milk, feeding frequency, medications and warning signs in case they needed to return urgently. Ethan listened to the entire explanation, impressed by the veterinarian's care and patience. When the woman left with the puppy, he made an observation that surprised Dr. Scott. "Doctor, you didn't charge for the puppy's treatment." "You noticed her?" Dr. Scott smiled. "I don't charge for abandoned animals. It's my way of helping. When I become a veterinarian, I'll do that too." Ethan's statement touched Dr. Scott. He saw in the boy a genuine passion for animals and a sensitivity that were essential qualities for a good vet. "Ethan, if you really want to be a veterinarian, you need to start preparing now. Study hard. In school, especially science and biology. I'm already studying. My mom was even surprised how much my grades improved." "That's great. And if you want, you can keep shadowing me during appointments. You have a knack for it." Dr. Scott's approval felt like an early diploma to Ethan. He left that first day of appointments even more determined about his future. At home during dinner, Ethan told Jennifer everything he had seen and learned in detail. His excitement was contagious, and Jennifer was moved to see how her son had found his calling. "Mom, did you see? I got to help Dr. Scott. He said I have a talent for it." "I did, son. I'm so proud of you. And when I grow up, I'll have a vet clinic just like his, but even bigger. There'll be space to care for abandoned animals too." Jennifer smiled, but also worried about the size of her son's dreams. She knew achieving all that would take a lot of effort and resources they didn't have at the moment. "Ethan, to become a veterinarian, you'll need to go to college. That costs a lot of money." "I know, Mom, but I'll study hard to get a scholarship, and I'll work to help pay for it too." Her son's determination moved Jennifer. She decided she would do everything in her power to support Ethan's dream, even if it meant sacrifices for her. In the following weeks, the partnership between Walter and Dr. Scott grew stronger. The Tuesday and Thursday appointments became well known throughout the neighborhood, and soon clients from farther streets began showing up. Ethan kept up his routine of shadowing appointments whenever possible. Dr. Scott started trusting him with simple tasks like organizing instruments, holding calm animals during exams, and even jotting down basic information. One day, during a particularly complicated case involving a dog that had been in a fight, Ethan showed a calmness that impressed Dr. Scott. The animal was agitated and had some injuries, but Ethan managed to soothe it while the vet cleaned the wounds. "Ethan, you have a natural gift with animals," Dr. Scott remarked after the appointment. "They trust you." "It's because I understand how they feel," Ethan replied simply. The answer revealed an emotional maturity that surprised the vet. He realized Ethan wasn't just playing at being a veterinarian. He truly had a calling for it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. 3 months after the partnership with Dr. Scott began, something unexpected happened that would test Ethan's determination and the stability of the small business that was thriving. One Thursday afternoon, Dr. Scott didn't show up for the scheduled appointments. Walter tried calling him several times, but the phone was out of service. Several neighbors arrived with their pets, waiting for the appointments that never happened. Ethan was there and saw the frustration of the people who had booked consultations. Their lady was particularly worried because her cat had been having trouble eating for 2 days. "Mr. Walter, what now?" asked Ethan, seeing how complicated the situation was. "I don't know, Ethan. This has never happened before. Doctor, Scott always lets us know when he can't come." The afternoon was awkward. Walter had to explain to everyone who arrived that the vet hadn't shown up, and he didn't know why. Some people were upset, others worried about their pets. Ethan watched it all with a strange feeling in his stomach. For the first time since he'd started observing the appointments, he realized just how much people relied on the service he'd helped create. The next morning, Walter finally managed to speak with Dr. Scott. The vet explained he'd had a family emergency and had to rush to another town. His mother had been in an accident, and he had to stay with her at the hospital. "Mr. Walter, I'm sorry I didn't call. Everything happened so fast," Dr. Scott explained over the phone. "I understand, Doctor. How's your mother doing?" "Getting better, thank God. But I'll need to stay here at least 2 more weeks. I can't leave her alone." The news brought relief about Dr. Scott's mother's condition, but also concern about continuing the appointments. Several people had already called asking when they could reschedule. Ethan was thoughtful about the situation. It was similar to what had happened with Walter and Bailey, but this time it affected many families who depended on the vet service. "Mr. Walter, do you know another vet who could come here while Dr. Scott is away?" Ethan asked. "I know a few, but I'm not sure they'd be willing to come out here." "Can I look online again?" Walter agreed, and Ethan spent the afternoon researching vets in the area. This time his search was more focused, looking for professionals who already offered home visits. He found 3 possibilities and wrote down their numbers. The next day, Walter called all 3. The first was fully booked, the second charged, much more than Dr. Scott, but the third showed interest. Dr. Catherine Anderson was an experienced vet looking to expand her home visit practice. She agreed to come see the neighborhood and discuss temporarily covering the appointments. "But I want to be clear, it would only be temporary," Dr. Catherine said over the phone. "I don't want to take your current partner's place." "Of course, Doctor. It's just so people aren't left without care while he sorts out his family situation." Dr. Catherine came the following afternoon. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and a serious but kind expression. She inspected the treatment space Walter had set up and spoke with a few neighbors who stopped by. Ethan was there, as always, watching the new vet closely. She had a different style than Dr. Scott, more direct and practical, but showed the same care for the animals. "You've set up a good service here," Dr. Catherine remarked after seeing the setup. "It's exactly what communities need." "It was Ethan's idea," Walter said, pointing to the boy. Dr. Catherine looked at Ethan with renewed interest. "How old are you, Ethan?" 9, Doctor. "And you want to be a vet when you grow up?" "Yes. I've been watching Dr. Scott's appointments for 3 months." "Interesting. Do you learn quickly?" Ethan nodded shyly. Dr. Catherine asked him a few questions about what he'd learned from observing the treatments. The boy's answers impressed her. "Mr. Walter, I'll cover the appointments while your partner is away. And if you'll allow it, I'd like Ethan to keep observing. He can learn different things from me." The proposal left Ethan excited. The opportunity to learn from 2 different veterinarians would greatly expand his knowledge. Dr. Catherine began her rounds the following week. Her style was truly different from Dr. Scott's. She was more technical in her explanations, using medical terms Ethan didn't know, but she also showed a special patience for teaching. "Ethan, do you know the difference between a symptomatic diagnosis and an etiological diagnosis?" Dr. Catherine asked during an appointment. "No, Doctor. Symptomatic is when we treat the symptoms we see. Etiological is when we find and treat the actual cause of the problem. The ideal is always to aim for the etiological." Ethan absorbed every new piece of information like a sponge. Dr. Catherine noticed his ability to learn and began including him more actively in the appointments. During a consultation with a dog that had been vomiting for 2 days, Dr. Catherine asked Ethan to observe some specific details. "Ethan, look at this dog's eyes. What do you notice?" "They're kind of sunken." "Exactly. And what does that indicate?" I don't know." "Dehydration. When the eyes look like this, it's a sign the animal has lost a lot of fluids." Ethan mentally noted each lesson. Dr. Catherine had a more structured teaching method than Dr. Scott, and it complemented his learning perfectly. 2 weeks later, Dr. Scott called to say he could return to his rounds. His mother was recovering well and had already found a caregiver to assist her. The news brought mixed feelings for Ethan. He was happy about Dr. Scott's return, but also sad that his chance to learn from Dr. Catherine was ending. "Dr. Catherine, can't you keep coming too?" Ethan asked on her last day. "Unfortunately, no, Ethan. There wouldn't be enough demand for 2 vets here. But I learned so much from you." Dr. Catherine was touched by the boy's sincerity. She thought for a few seconds before making an unexpected offer. "Ethan, what if you visited my clinic on Saturday mornings? You could observe some appointments there too." The proposal thrilled Ethan. Jennifer, who was present for the conversation, worried about the responsibility. "Doctor, I don't want Ethan to get in the way of your work," Jennifer said. "On the contrary, Ethan has a natural intuition with animals. He might even help me." The agreement was made. Ethan would now split his time between appointments with Dr. Scott in the neighborhood and visits to Dr. Catherine's clinic on weekends. Dr. Scott's return was celebrated by the neighbors. Many had missed his personalized care and the close relationships he maintained with pet owners. "Ethan, I missed you too," Dr. Scott said when they met again. "How was it with Dr. Catherine?" "It was great. She taught me different things than you do. Now I'll get to learn from both of you." Dr. Scott was happy to hear Ethan would have diverse learning opportunities. He himself recognized that every vet had different specialties and methods. Ethan's routine became intense, but he loved it. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, he accompanied Dr. Scott in the neighborhood. On Saturday mornings, he went to Dr. Catherine's clinic, and the rest of the time, he studied and helped Walter organize the products. At Dr. Catherine's clinic, Ethan encountered more complex cases that didn't come up during home visits. Simple surgeries, more detailed exams, long-term treatments. Each experience broadened his understanding of veterinary medicine. One Saturday, a case arrived that would leave a deep mark on Ethan. A family brought in a dog that had been hit by a car. The animal was conscious but had a visibly fractured leg. "Ethan, this case is more complicated," Dr. Catherine said. "Catherine, you can observe, but you're free to leave if it gets too hard to watch." Ethan decided to stay. He wanted to understand every aspect of the profession, including the toughest moments. Dr. Catherine took x-rays that showed a complicated fracture. Surgery would be needed to place pins in the animal's leg. Ethan watched the entire pre-surgical preparation, from anesthesia to organizing the instruments. "This is the most technical part of veterinary medicine," Dr. Catherine explained as she got ready. "It takes a lot of study and practice." During the surgery, Ethan watched in fascination as Dr. Catherine worked with millimeter precision. Every movement was calculated, every cut had a specific purpose. "See how I'm positioning this pin?" Dr. Catherine said, showing Ethan the procedure. "It has to be at exactly this angle so the bone heals properly." Ethan absorbed every detail. For the first time, he was seeing the most technical and complex side of veterinary medicine, far beyond the basic care he had learned so far. The surgery lasted 2 hours and was successful. When the dog woke up from anesthesia, Ethan helped monitor its vital signs and behavior. "How do you feel after seeing a real surgery?" Dr. Catherine asked. "It's amazing. It's way more complicated than I imagined, but also more interesting." That's veterinary medicine, Ethan. There's the simple side of basic care, which you learn from Dr. Scott, and then there's the complex side of surgeries and specialized treatments. I want to learn it all. Ethan's determination impressed Dr. Catherine. She could tell the boy was truly serious about his calling. In the following months, Ethan continued splitting his time between the two veterinarians, gathering diverse experiences. He started keeping a notebook where he wrote down everything he learned, creating his own veterinary manual. Walter watched the boy's dedication with admiration. The small business they had built together was changing Ethan's life in ways much deeper than he had ever imagined. "Ethan, are you sure you really want to be a vet?" Walter asked one day, seeing the boy studying intensely from books he had borrowed from the school library. "I'm absolutely sure, Mr. Walter. This is what I want to do forever." "Then you need to know you'll have to study a lot more than you are now. Veterinary school is one of the toughest out there." "I know. Dr. Scott and Dr. Catherine already explained it to me, but I'll make it." Ethan's confidence was inspiring. Walter decided he would do everything in his power to support the dream of the boy who had transformed his life, and Bailey's. The end of the story.